In my last video, I talked about investing in yourself and told you I had some advice that could potentially change your career, and for sure has changed mine. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and check it out here. Now, we ended off that video about halfway done with this piece, so let's get back to work. And no, I'm Noah. So this is Robin Ely, and this is his work. He's easily my favorite artist in the game right now. And it was a privilege to go to his studio, pick his brain, and just try to learn as much as possible from him. Before I get into this advice that he shared with me, when I was out there, we did talk a bunch about some practical painting stuff, things about color theory and brush control and edges and relationships, all that good stuff. And all of that just inspired me to repaint everything that I had done to date. So I had already invested so many hours into this painting, getting to about halfway, and felt the desire to go back and redo everything when I got back to Albuquerque, when I got back home. So my work as of late is very high chroma. If you take a look at the reference photo that I constructed, you can see some very vibrant, high chroma, very saturated, almost neon colors, which can be difficult to paint, especially using oils. So he gave me a lot of advice on how to make it more realistic, more believable. Some colors to buy, some specific tubes of paint that would help in my execution. Go ahead and grab some of these colors. So here's a few of the colors that he shared with me. Michael Harding, Phthalo Blue, and Titanium White. Cobalt Violet Deep, Permanent Red Violet, Cadmium Lemon, and Radiant White. Now, these tubes of paint are not cheap, and I kind of spoke about that in the last video. You kind of just have to bite the bullet and invest in the materials to execute the way that you want to. So because my work is about light and I use the color spectrum and the rainbow and everything, I need to have high saturated, high chroma colors, and there's no way around paying for very expensive tubes of paint. So that's what I had to do. Outside of that, after getting the tubes of paint, that does not ensure that you're going to have a successful painting, right? You can waste all your money on these tubes of paint and be no better at painting. So he gave me some practical advice and let me know that the creation of this glowing effect is going to be about relationships. It's not so much the single color, the local color, or the color of the single tube of paint. It's going to be that color in relation to the color that's next to it. So if I darken the color that's next to this very bright section, it's going to make the bright section appear even brighter. Things that I kind of already knew, but just put in a way that made more sense. And he gave me actually preview painting, a little sample painting that I was able to take home that my boy Donnie is up here sitting on. So he painted this when I was at his studio, looking at my reference, and just, yeah, gave me a little demo, if you will, about my reference picture and just how he would go about painting it. So that was very beneficial. And yeah, came back home with that in mind, just thinking about relationships, thinking about the brightest sections and trying to pair that with some darker sections to make them pop more. I was pretty much painting everything too bright and with too much light and relying on white to brighten everything and then relying on black to darken everything. And I was using titanium white, which is fine, but this radiant white, which I talked about, it's a little bit pure and just allows the colors to keep their chroma better. But either way, I was relying too much on white and black to lighten or darken, and it was causing things to be very gray. In oil painting circles, you kind of hear that black, like ivory black or Mars black, are frowned upon. You should never use them. Using black is a cardinal sin. And I never understood that until now. I began using that cad lemon, the yellow ochre to brighten colors up. I began using complementaries to darken or lighten. It gave me the combo of transparent iron oxide and ultramarine. If you take a look at my palette, it's not in the best state right now, but this is the way that I now arrange everything. And I keep the ultramarine and iron oxide right next to each other in the middle of the palette. So whenever I need black or I need to take any orange color darker, I'll use the ultramarine. And then if I have a cooler color that I need to drop in value and need to bring down, then I'll use the transparent red oxide. They make a pretty perfect black, but also you have control over it and you can make it cooler or warmer depending on how much you mix it. Think about this and using this sort of black, because again, it never really made sense to me. I always thought it was stupid. If you add like an ivory black, which I do have on my palette, it's going to gray the color out. So if you have an orange, if you have a green or a yellow, and you add just ivory black to it, it's going to make your color gray. It's going to be a shade of whatever color you have. Whereas if you mix a complement, it doesn't immediately take all the chroma out, it doesn't take all the saturation out of the color, but it does make it darker. So you keep the saturation up. I'm gonna put on the screen what's called the Munsell color wheel. It's a perfect visual that does a good job of illustrating and visualizing the color wheel, and I think the best way to think about it, because I mean, color theory is just obviously a whole topic in and of itself, but overview, I used to visualize going around the color wheel, but you need to move through the color wheel. You need to drag things up and down and through the color wheel, and clicked in my brain. So that in itself was a big deal. And overall, I was working on this painting for over a year. What do you think so far? Do you think it was worth it to go back and repaint everything? Or do you think I would have been better served kind of scrapping this one, taking my licks, and just starting on a fresh piece? weighed this in my mind, and I think a big reason why I decided to stick with this one and go over everything was this advice that I've been holding on to that he shared with me. This advice is not the most profound, but in my experience, the best advice is often not. Doesn't need to be profound, it just needs to be very effective and potent, and I think it is. And this advice is that one painting can change your life. And he knew this because this is exactly what happened to him. He left a career as an illustrator in his early 30s and decided to pursue a career as a fine artist. In doing so, he painted a self-portrait and entered it into an Australian portrait competition. This painting skyrocketed him, catapulted his career, and it was off to the races from there. He now sells his paintings for over 6 figures, but it all started with just one piece. One brushstroke on top of another, thousands of brushstrokes, creating this one piece that just one person needs to see, and your career has changed and your life has changed forever. And this is the attitude that I've been trying to have every time I sit down at the easel. And I think this mindset would be beneficial for you to have as well. Knowing that what you're doing is not arbitrary. When you're in the studio alone and you struggle to find the motivation, know that every single decision, every color decision you make, every brush stroke you put, don't do it haphazardly. Don't ever be lazy with these decisions, because each decision is important. Each decision adds up to create the painting in its totality. And yeah, I've tried to just execute that. I've tried to never take time off on the pieces. And if you do this, I believe the results take care of themselves. So I came back home with all this in mind and decided to lock in and treat this painting like a brand new one. Not worrying about the time invested or the financial component, knowing that I was going to invest so much time into this painting and I was not going to get a return. It just caused me to slow down and paint this like it had the ability to change my career, to change my life. And special because this painting was a reintroduction to the fine art world for me. I've been painting murals for years now and want to get back into the fine art space. And this piece was that opportunity. It was part of a group show that took place here in Albuquerque with 12 artists from the area, and just got my feet wet, scratched the itch, and just made me hungry to produce more work. I was satisfied with the final result, but after I completed it, I knew I could do such a better job and was hungry to just get back and start on that next painting. Like I mentioned, this painting was a part of a show. It didn't end up selling, and that's a huge blessing. But the lessons I learned in the creation of this piece are really invaluable, and hopefully they'll help you too. Subscribe if you're new. If you know someone who needs to hear this advice, share the video with them. And I'll catch you in the next one. Grace and peace. There. The fall before the climb. Oh no.